Before week 2 of the NFL season begins, you should try and improve your team. It sounds pretty simple, right? But being active can actually go a long way. So in this video, we're going to talk about the top 6 players you should be trading for or trading away right now in your fantasy football leagues. If this is your first time here, I'm Joe. I've done over 1 billion views in sports over the last decade, but more importantly, I've helped thousands of people just like you win their fantasy league. But the way I structure these videos is always the same. First, I start every video with the top NFL news stories, and then I tell you why they matter for fantasy football so that you're up to date, just a way for me to deliver some value right off the bat. And then I answer my 5 favorite YouTube questions from the last video. That's just a way to reward some positivity and smart questions in every video. It's also a little bit of an engagement hack for me because the more comments that I get, the more the YouTube is going to push this video to more viewers. And then we dive into today's one key topic, aka the reason that you click. The goal is always to deliver on every single click, so feel free to skip ahead if you need to, but let's jump right into today's news. First up, a Monday Night Football recap. The Vikings came from behind to beat the Bears in J.J. McCarthy's NFL debut game. Some of the fantasy takeaways for me were that Jordan Mason outcarried Aaron Jones 15-8, but Jones more than made up for that in fantasy with that 27-yard touchdown reception. Justin Jefferson also scored, but outside of that, the receivers were very quiet in this game. Adam Thielen dropped his only target. On the Bears side, Caleb Williams threw a touchdown to Odunze and then ran one in himself. But quite the comeback victory for the Vikings in week 1 on the road. Love to see McCarthy do well, especially after kind of a rough start to this game. Really came alive in that second half. This was a big one. Jaguars are sending Tank Bigsby to the Philadelphia Eagles in exchange for a 2026 5th and 6th round pick. So Eagles get their backup behind Saquon Barkley. So he's going to be competing with rookie Will Shipley. And then Jacksonville kind of clears a lane. Either, at least this is what I'm taking from this. They kind of clear a lane for Bayshell Tutin to back up Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne, obviously, with that huge week 1 performance. For fantasy, I think Etienne is kind of locked into like a true workhorse role now. Definitely gives Tutin a little bit of deep league upside, I think, if anything does happen to Etienne, though. So I think all of that is now a little bit less murky, which is positive from a fantasy perspective. Next one, it does look like George Kittle has been placed on the injured reserve. 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan confirmed Kittle will miss multiple games with a hamstring injury. Yeah, San Francisco already banged up, which we've talked about at length. Brock Purdy, Juwan Jennings, they're banged up as well. So this is a major blow to this offense. Fantasy managers should be trying to find a backup plan at tight end immediately. Kittle's absence could last a few weeks, it looks like. So we will see. You hate to see it. At least he got you some points before he got hurt in week 1, but never a great thing to highlight here on a Monday, or on a Tuesday, I should say. This is kind of an interesting one. Sean Payton admitted he basically abandoned the run after calling 17 passes to just 3 runs in the first quarter against the Titans. Yeah, Denver still ran pretty efficiently when they did, 5 yards a clip, but Bo Nix didn't do much at all. Didn't do much at all on the ground with all the passing that was happening. It looks like it could mean a heavier run script, at least that's how I'm reading this quote, against the Colts this week, which does boost the outlook for J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey in fantasy for week 2. The last one I want to talk through is Brian Schottenheimer said the Cowboys need to see more consistency from Jaden Blue to make him active. Yeah, Javonte Williams running in those 2 touchdowns. It doesn't look like Blue has been doing enough to get in there. We'll see if that ends up being something that progresses as we work through the beginning of the season. Rookies trying to get in there. It's a tough position. All right, everyone's favorite part of the video. Let's go through some Q&A from the last video. 4 good ones today, starting with talking through Kendrick Bourne on the waiver wire. Yeah, is there going to be like an immediate target share opportunity here if Kittle and or Jennings can't go? I think so. The Niners in particular, just to be clear, have been one of the most unlucky teams when it's come to injury this season, so you hate to see that. Bourne in particular, though, played 58 games for San Fran, 2017 to 2020, about 1,700 yards, 11 touchdowns. So yeah, with Kittle out for multiple weeks, I definitely think that Bourne has a path to relevance basically immediately. So priority waiver ad for me. Next one, Drake London owner here. High waiver priority, full PPR. Should I prioritize Booty or Quinshawn? Thanks. Yeah, both definitely carry some uncertainty, my man. So your roster depth is probably what matters here. I think Booty is going to be, or I guess he's not going to be a set it and forget it type of starter for you. But I think a pretty nice streaming piece in some good matchups right now. So I'm interested there. Judkins is interesting because he's definitely a really strong prospect, but he's missed a lot of time already facing that suspension, all of that stuff. Yeah, he's got the potential to be the Browns' lead back by the end of the season, though. So if you can afford the stash with Quinshawn, I think that's my lean. You're really just hoping for that late season surge. If you can afford to stash him, I'd say do it. Yeah. I got Bryce Young for my QB. Should I swap him for Daniel Jones? I've had this like some combination of should I drop X quarterback for Daniel Jones? And to me, it's one of those situations where, I mean, we basically saw Bryce hit his stride last season down the stretch. He was great. He had 3 top 10 finishes in his last 6 games. So for me, I need to see it with Daniel Jones. I still think he's a really strong ad. In general, though, I think we don't want to overreact. I think this week might be a much tougher matchup, just in general, with playing against this Denver defense, who I think might have one of the best defenses in the league. So we'll see what happens with Daniel Jones against that. If he proves it against Denver, then we might be willing to kind of get him into that top 10 area, just not quite there yet. I see both of these guys, if we're talking specifically about Bryce and Daniel Jones, they're matchup-based start sets probably. I think Jones is worth the pickup, but I wouldn't drop Bryce for him just yet, if that makes sense. We got one more in here. Do you think I should hold on to DJ Moore considering lots of belief on rumors that Odunze might overtake Moore as the wide receiver 1 in Chicago? Love the videos from Australia. Awesome. Thanks for joining me from all the way in Australia, my man. Rome out-targeted Moore 9-5 in week 1. Did catch that touchdown from Caleb Williams, so I wouldn't move on from Moore just yet. I think he's basically a hold. I think he can still emerge as like their lead receiver and definitely have some big games. 194 receptions over the last 2 years. His 22 yards per reception in the first game suggests that maybe he's being schemed differently, maybe a better big play guy this year than he was last year when he was getting a lot of stuff around the line of scrimmage. So hopefully that helps, man. Appreciate your question. Today's one key topic, aka the reason you click, 6 players that you need to trade for or trade away before week 2. One of the tougher times of the year probably to make trades, because if someone drafted someone, they probably like them. Or the other side of that, you have to know your league, right? There's going to be some guys that panic almost immediately. So there's a happy medium here. And there's a few situations that I think are really important right now if you do want to be trading. So we're going to move things over here to our handy dandy whiteboard. 3 players to trade for, 3 players to trade away. The first one shouldn't be a surprise because he's on the thumbnail. Let's talk about Justin Fields. Justin Fields, one of the guys that we were certainly bullish on coming into the fantasy season, but the QB2 in week 1 wasn't something that I saw coming right away. So the QB2, 0 turnovers, 12 rushes, 48 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. That's a pretty big performance. Immediately, that dual threat weapon that we knew we would get here. We knew we'd have the floor, but he showed us a little bit of ceiling as well, as at least the Jets were showing a lot of designed runs, a lot of red zone usage, and definitely, I think going forward, there's going to be some bankable weeks here. So I think that the rushing side of this is really the cheat code. But I think when we think of Justin Fields, the thing that I don't think anyone's mentioned yet is that this offense or this defense that they just played against, Pittsburgh, is known for stopping these running quarterbacks. They were a top 10 team at defending running quarterbacks. So it only gets a little bit easier. This coming week gets a lot easier. So they do in general have a pretty soft passing slate as well. So I'm just going to say soft matchups are coming. So you love to see that. So we want to buy in on these guys before it shows up in the box scores typically. So the new offensive coordinator, Tanner Engstrom, plus Glenn, they're going to kind of keep things, I think, keep the pace modest, but they are going to be giving him still a lot of ceiling in the way that they're using him from an efficiency standpoint. So the offensive line is at least reasonable now for the Jets. I don't think they're kind of middle of the pack. So nothing really to, I guess, get us away from Fields in that way. But the thing that we have to keep coming back here is he's been a top 10 fantasy QB per game as a starter. So it's not just that rushing floor, but he still has been able to give us enough points on the ground to offer a decent ceiling. Top 10 in fantasy points per game as a starter. He was the QB7, the QB9, the QB5, small sample, obviously, in Pittsburgh last year. QB7 with 9.2 carries and 38.5 rushing yards per game. 43% of his fantasy points come from rushing, which honestly, I don't have a problem with, to be completely honest. I think it's still one of those guys that if you can trade for him right now, you might not have to give a ton up. So to me, I think we want to at least talk about getting him before this next matchup because it is significantly easier than against this Pittsburgh team. So we kind of have some of these, I guess, matchups coming up. We were just talking about how Denver is one of the best defenses in the entire league, but we get a softer matchup for Fields coming up next, right? So this Bills defense just got ran all over by Lamar Jackson. And they've historically struggled a little bit to stop running quarterbacks. So I think that this matchup, you want to get this trade done before this week. So that's why I keep talking about how one of my favorite picks this week is Fields' higher rushing yards. Last week's matchup was one of the toughest for running QBs. This week's is one of the easiest. Since we're talking about making picks, I'm teaming up with DraftKings Pick 6 to give new customers a deal you won't want to miss for week 2. When you play $5 or more on your first paid Pick 6 entry, you'll get $50 in bonus picks instantly. That's right. Play $5, get $50 in bonus picks to keep building your slips and take your shot at big payouts. Just download the DraftKings Pick 6 app. Sign up using my promo code HOLKA and start playing. If you've been thinking about trying Pick 6, now's the time to get in. Just use my code HOLKA to sign up, and all new DraftKings customers can play $5 and get $50 in bonus picks instantly. Let's build some slips. Now, next player. Let's talk about a guy that I would be willing to trade away next. So after a decent performance, who's a guy that we can get a lot for right now that we might not be able to get this much for later? And the one guy that really stands out to me, Javonte Williams. So obviously 15 carries, 54 yards, 2 touchdowns. So the box score looks strong. But to me, like, I'm not just trying to capture this type of upside from like a per rush perspective. I think that 54 yards on the ground with that type of volume, I would have liked to see a little bit more yardage there. So for me, trading away like touchdown luck is something that I would like to do, typically. Like, is this just fool's gold with the TDs? The 2 TDs. That's the question. That's what you're selling to someone if you do want to move on from there. They were both these 1 yard kind of plunges, so it kind of masked to me the inefficiency that we saw from Javonte. So why it matters is I think that if we're going to get some touchdown smoke here, it's not proof, for me at least, of a full rebound for him. What this really signaled to me was the efficiency collapse. 42nd of 46 backs and yards per carry, dead last in yards after contact per rush last year. So we've already seen it. We haven't really seen any sort of rebound in the efficiency department yet. The broken tackle machine, I guess, that we once knew, I think is gone. It's replaced by more of like a replacement level type of output. But I think sometimes in these situations too, we need to follow the money. And what he got was a low commitment contract. And that matters. Dallas gave him a 1-year, $3 million deal. That's backup money, not feature back confidence to me. So I think why this matters is he basically just a lead back label, or is that label in general super thin? Or I guess, are we going to get replaced by someone else, right? Whether it's Miles Sanders, maybe it's rookie Jaden Blue, who's kind of still lurking like we talked about earlier today. So to me, this contract stuff does matter. And this feels like the perfect sell window. That's at least the question that we're asking. But that's how I feel about it. The Cowboys ranked 27th in rushing schedule difficulty. They project as one of the NFL's fastest paced pass first teams. So to me, if you're really just buying volume here in a pass heavy offense, I think the smart move is to sell high when you get a big touchdown spike. And that's just what happened. The next guy that I think we should trade for should be obvious. He's someone that we've been talking about a decent amount, but there's still some people that are a little bit concerned for good reason. You guys know who I'm talking about? The next guy I want to be trading for is Christian McCaffrey. And this is, again, dependent on your league. So there's going to be some owners that were really freaked out by the Christian McCaffrey stuff, and there's going to be other owners that knew what they were getting into and were totally fine with it when they did end up drafting him a few weeks ago. Maybe they felt a little bit better than they did going into this past week, but we did get a lot of production here. So it's going to be one of the harder ones probably to trade for because that owner is probably going to be exhaling right now. But really what we saw was full go, RB1. Let's make this a little bit thinner. Full go RB1, 22 carries, 10 targets. He went 9 for 73 receiving 3 days after that calf tweak that they were calling it. San Francisco still fed him elite volume. So full go, I think, is pretty clear at this point. Week 2 also is a weaker defense. So week 2, we get the Saints, which would be nice. So that's a good follow-up spot. So if you are going to be trading for McCaffrey or attempting to trade for McCaffrey, I think this is probably the week to do it, even though he's coming off of a really strong game. So to me, we've got some tailwind here. So that's the sense of urgency for me. So San Francisco draws the NFL's easiest passing schedule, the 4th easiest rushing schedule. So for like a dual threat guy like McCaffrey, he's sitting pretty in the matchup department. We're going to get a lot of targets. Obviously, the receptions are kind of what pad that floor, even if the play kind of stays capped from an upside perspective with how many injuries they have, with how productive this offense can be in general, but also how the 49ers do play pretty slow. So these are things that you can sell to this CMC owner. You're selling the injury, obviously, but you're also just selling this offense not being one that you want to be super invested in general. So to me, on the other side of that, the ceiling is greater than the age concerns. To me, that's basically what he proved to us. Let's zoom out a little bit here. That's what he's proved to us in this last game. So 4 complete seasons finishing as the RB1 or RB2. As a 49er, he's averaged 21 opportunities for 115 total yards. That's absolutely crazy. 21 opportunities for 115. Let's actually make this readable for you guys. 22 opportunities for 115 total yards. Crazy, right? So the question becomes, should you trade CMC before week 2? And I think so. Again, this is another one that I think has a little bit of sense of urgency. We already just saw that RB1 workload, but we know the matchups are getting even softer as we come through here. So I think every week where this injury baggage, this injury loom over CMC's head is, I guess, shown to not be that big of a deal, is one, I guess, makes it even harder to trade for CMC in general. And to me, he's already firmly locked into that elite RB1 tier in this offense. He's someone that hopefully you have on some teams. He's someone that we've been talking about in a positive way for most of the offseason. Last week wasn't the most fun for McCaffrey owners, but I'm not worried. Who's the next guy we're going to trade away? Trading away Javonte. Who's the next guy we're going to trade away? Another guy that had a big performance in week 1. It's Zay Flowers. Now, hear me out. Hear me out. To me, this is the perfect... Whoops. Let's move this over. To me, is the perfect sell high. Especially if you drafted him in kind of this range of guys, you're probably feeling pretty good about your week 1 usage for sure. But I think we can sell the spike. %47.4% target share on 19 attempts, 143 yards, touchdown. I mean, career day, right? So textbook sell high off of a career day for Zay Flowers, because I think week 2 in general, another difficult matchup at the Jets. I think there's a high likelihood that that was one of his best weeks of the entire year, and we saw it in week 1. So perfect sell high moment on that flash. So the usage ceiling is what we have to talk about, right? So the usage ceiling, he had 27.4 routes per game last year. That was the wide receiver 60 overall, 6.8 targets per game. That was the wide receiver 36 last year. So to me, the role is capped. The role is capped, and by design, honestly, with what the Ravens want to do. So even with strong efficiency numbers, which he has, no one's trying to say that Flowers isn't a good player. The top-down volume is really what is going to suppress his ceiling overall. There's really only one ball. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Derrick Henry, highest rushing TD projection basically every single week. The Ravens lean kind of towards like tight end, fullback blocking in close, just try and jam things in there with Derrick Henry. And then obviously Lamar as well. The wide receiver touchdowns are what gets squeezed in this offense in particular, right? So Baltimore faces the 4th toughest rushing schedule, yet Henry is still projected as like the tight end favorite in most games. So the touchdown path, it's mostly going to be captured by one player, is razor thin for an offense that is not going to throw a ton. So to me, do we sell the wide receiver 1 spike and try and get a wide receiver 1 return while we can? I would say yes. So with the pass rate in general, with the amount of mouths to feed, with the volatility and really not a lot of room for error in general that you get in this offense, he wasn't a guy that I was drafting aggressively, but if you do have him, I do think this is a pretty solid time to sell that spike. Now, who do we want to buy? Like, who are we going to target here? We got one more to talk about today. If you want my full list, my trade away and trade targets list, you can go to fantasyaccelerator.com, get access to our season-long, year-round membership community where we talk through even more questions, but then also we expand on these lists a little bit. Nico Collins. Nico's another one of our guys. There's definitely some concerns here overall, but he makes a pretty decent buy low for me right now after week 1. Let's talk through it. At least hear me out. So you're going to get that elite usage. That is not how you spell usage. Elite usage when healthy. Elite usage when healthy, 28.3% target share. Elite usage when healthy. We're going to give you a 28.3% targets per route run, 33.4% of the team's target share when active. 33.4%. It's a crazy number, right? Of the target share when active. Back-to-back top tier yard per route run seasons, and that's really what we're looking at if we're looking at efficiency and trying to highlight who some of the best wide receivers in the NFL are, right? So he was behind only Puka Nacua and A.J. Brown in that yards per route run stat. He missed 5 games, but still went over 1,000 yards. And 7 TDs in just 12 games. So why it matters to me, I think we still are going to get this alpha usage. And he already projects to be like that wide receiver 1 profile from a talent perspective. So I'm in on that. But let's talk about the volume and the scoring equity. So to me, this is like maybe the only number that matters. 39.4%. Any idea what that number is? 39.4% of Houston's red zone targets, 57.9% of end zone targets when he was on the field last year. It's a crazy number. So where he's projected right now, at least for the season, like kind of like that 140 to 150 target range, 1,400 receiving yards, depending on what your model spits out. I think he's still kind of like a small miss, big hit type of player. And those are the type of players that I think makes the most sense at like this wide receiver 1 tier if you're going to be trading for a guy. So he's not going to be just racking up yards. He's going to be dominating like those high leverage scoring opportunities. So I think what people probably haven't talked about enough is this system shift. So really the surrounding cast shift as well. So new offensive coordinator Nick Caley brings kind of like that McVay style play action, 3 wide receiver sets. Honestly, this is what's expected to like unlock this passing game in general. Obviously, no Tank Dell consolidates targets even more and even further towards Nico, in my opinion. The really big problem here is the offensive line. So that's what you sell. And for a lot of these wide receivers that struggled in week 1, you got to be able to package like the bear case if you want to be able to trade for these guys. And the offensive line, I think, is still one of the worst in the league. And it probably will continue to be for most of this season. So that hurts the passing game as well as the run game, and especially someone like Nico who needs time to kind of get open, right? But I think the question you have to ask yourself if you do want to trade for Nico is what if week 1 was the floor? Just 3 for 25 yards. He still led all Texans in snaps, 53 of 63 snaps, and he led the team in routes as well. That was his lowest target total since the mid-2023 season. So that usage should regress positively, in my opinion. So I still think that Stroud is projected to be like a rebound player this year, despite the offensive line woes. And if you get one game like that from Nico in week 1, and he allows you to kind of, if we find that panicking owner and you can capture a guy like that, I think those are the type of plays that really end up being long-term wins. We got one more trade away player. Any idea who this could be? Any idea who this could be? If you guess this right, let me know in the comments, all right? Let's talk through it. He's a guy that we were bearish on most of the offseason, and it didn't make us look very good in week 1. It's Deebo Samuel. For the record, I don't dislike Deebo Samuel. Somebody in the comments saying that. I disliked the opportunity in general, and I don't love the fit overall. So some of that has changed, some of that is not. But for me, if we're looking for a time to sell someone, it's still going to be after like a week 1 spike overreaction. Everyone has like that one owner in their league that completely overreacts in good ways and bad ways, right? But from this perspective, 7 catches for 77 receiving yards plus that 19-yard rushing TD. Saw 6 more targets than Terry McLaurin. These are things you can sell, right? He had that week 1 alpha look. That's your leverage. So I think the other side of it is I still think he's going to be playing second fiddle most of the year. Maybe we adjust this a little bit based on that first week. But I think we lean into that perception a little bit before it settles because I don't think this is where it's going to last. I think he's still probably closer to that wide receiver 2 box score than the wide receiver 1 box score. So the things that you want to sell here, or the things that I believe would be a good reason to sell, would be his decline and really gets the durability flags for me. So it's decline plus durability. Those are reasons that I would be selling on Deebo. So last year, career lows in receptions, 3.4 per game, 44.7 yards per game. And then his per target route rate also slipped from about 22% to 18%. So the volume trend of him like earning targets definitely wasn't great. But the thing that was really scary about all of this was the forced tackles missed. So really why you want this guy is for the yak, right? That's why you want him. So that absolutely cratered last year. And really his yards after catch kind of faded as the season went on last year as well. So not only do we have those durability concerns, we're really not getting a ton out of him taking those hits like we used to, at least. Also, I kind of think that this system still caps upside. And let me explain what I mean by that. So Kingsbury kind of has like that RPO quick game, definitely fits Deebo, so that part makes sense. But if this offense really, I think, is going to suppress these really large target shares, it's not good for McLaurin, and it's definitely not good for Deebo. So Washington projects to play at a super fast pace, so 64 plays per game, something like that, 61% roughly pass rate. So that's positive. If we're going to give him a few rushing TDs on the season as well, that can improve his ceiling, all of that. But to me, I think that the system really, I don't think they're going to consolidate it into a few weapons, if that makes sense. It's still going to be spread out pretty aggressively. So to me, I think this might be one of the best cash outs. If you ended up with Deebo, I think this is one of the best cash outs of week one. So to me, you can sell high now before this usage normalizes, flips them into kind of that steady wide receiver 2 range. When week one is kind of top of mind, this is the time to aggressively move into someone that's a tier above for your season long rankings, not necessarily just for your week one, week two, week 3 rankings, if that makes sense. If you made it this far, drop your favorite emoji in the comments. Right now, we're doing about 2 videos per week. I'm debating doing more trade content, but broken down by position instead. So I need a signal that's something you guys would want. So hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time.